feel, which is a tradition of India, Bharatiya Samskruti hai. The felicitation is to give inspiration to others, to follow these great personalities and do something good in their life. That's the purpose of the felicitation. By giving a award, is nothing going to add to their reward, but it's a recognition. And it also is a guidance to the younger generation, the new entrants into the profession, to see the qualities, the caliber, the capacity, the conduct of the person who has conducted himself or herself with dignity, with ethics, with values, and made contribution to the cause for which they have taken up that profession. And it's a reminder that this profession is a noble profession. It's a mission, not for commission. That has to be understood by one and all. Friends, let me convey my hearty congratulations to all the winners of the National Awards for Excellence in Journalism. Some of the thoughts that are lingering in the minds of the many people across the country already have been expressed by the Press Council of India chairman. So for some people it may appear to be bitter, but the truth is always bitter. I need not explain you better to the journalists, because you always face the problem of reporting the truth and the challenges you face in your day-to-day life. The press in India has a long and illustrious history ever since the first newspaper, the Bengali Gazette, was started by James Augustus Hickey in 1780. When the struggle to gain independence from the British began gathering momentum, the press became an active, important vehicle to inspire the people and voice their aspirations. Several newspapers and journals, particularly in vernacular ones, played a very crusading role in the freedom movement. The press was the main source of propaganda for the freedom fighters, even as the British rulers tried to suppress it at every conceivable opportunity. Several journals and newspapers rose to the occasion, including Raja Ram Mohan Ray's Sambandh Kaumudi in Bengali in 1821, Mirat ul Akbar in Persian in 1822, Kesari Maharatha, the Hindu from the south, Anand Bazar Patrika, Vande Mataram, All Balag and All Hilal, Young India, of course, and Hindustan Times. Undaunted by the ironclad restrictions imposed by the Britishers, the press remained fearless, and the same indomitable spirit continued to be a prominent feature of the Indian media ever since. Barring a temporary aberration during the infamous emergency, when the press behaved like the handmaiden of the government, of course, then also there were few exceptions. My salutations to the great persons, whether it is Ramnath Goenka, or whether it is C.R. Irani, or it is the statesman, mainstream. Some of these people, they played an excellent role, and they stood against the government, mighty government at that time. I remember when I was detainee under MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act, for the simple sin of inviting Jay Prakash Narayan to my university, they have put me behind bars for 17.5 months. And during the Jay period, we have learned so much, of course, thanks to Indiraji for that. And my course of destiny has changed. One thing I noted, one day we got the newspapers in Mushirabad jail in Hyderabad. And the newspaper's front page, 2 items were tarred, blackened. We were wondering, I discussed along with the other detainees, and then by what happened? They said the news, of course, which is already known to us, our two of the detainees in jail, they were hanged in the next barrack. The same jail where we were there. I think Krishna Gowda and Bomaya, 2 people. with some ideology. But that news was suppressed. I was wondering, why newspapers are already censored by the censor, and again censoring them within the jail. What is this happening to this country? So I could not resist the temptation of questioning. Since my younger days, that used to be my habit. Now, of course, I must allow others to question in Rajya Sabha and get the answers to them. I can't question anybody. Then I already finished my law. I did not practice, of course. Then I filed a petition in the High Court and then went and argued my case. At the end of the day, there were exceptional judges who gave relief, saying that there cannot be a censor on censor. Finally. Because at that time, you know, the infamous that statement made by the Attorney General, Shri Day, who said that if a police officer shot a person, is there a remedy? He said, Milord, as I know, there is no such remedy. That was the situation. And the press, unfortunately, at that time, could not stand up, except the few honorable exceptions I have already mentioned. So friends, but at the same time, the press during those times was the main instrument of bringing together during the freedom movement from different backgrounds to fight for the noble cause of attaining independence. It indeed was the biggest mission for journalists who left no stone unturned in propagating the cause of freeing India from the clutches of British yoke. Following independence, the press in India continued to play a role of watchdog and held a mirror to the people's problems and their aspirations, and remained as one of the main pillars in protecting and strengthening democracy in the country, except the period, as I mentioned earlier. Today, the media landscape is dotted with thousands of journals, newspapers, hundreds or thousands of TV channels. It's very difficult to count the number of TV channels. How many? ETV to RTV, MeTV to MaTV, TV1 to TV10. How many TVs? Nobody knows. They have so many channels. You have making news, breaking news, good news, bad news, नहीं तो खुद उनका news. आज तक, कल तक, सीधी बात, उल्टी बात, कितना बात है याद रखना में मुश्किल है. याद रखना में मुश्किल है. And if they don't get anybody, they will take on each other. That also we are seeing the new trends in the new days. The scores of radio stations also. Of course, you also have social media, which has become one of the main drivers of information in the digital age. But at the same time, friends, I'm sure you all agree with me, the contours of journalism have changed over the years, although it continues to cast huge influence in molding public opinion and decision making by the governments, especially in democracies. Watergate scandal in the USA is a memorable example of how a free and fearless press can cause the downfall even a powerful president. I don't want to touch contemporary Indian scams and scandals which were brought to the fore thanks to the media again and the fearless journalists who exposed these scams against the mighty will of the government of the times. They have played a great role, commendable role. And in India too, we had an instance where a chief minister has to resign after the press highlighted the scandal relating to cement. I mentioned a small thing intentionally. Cement scam at that time. I have cited these examples just to highlight the crusading role for a free press which can play it in a democracy. Friends, one thing I want to stress here, information is like oxygen for furthering our life and aspiration. But information with confirmation is more than an ammunition. To fight against injustice, to fight against inequalities, to fight against corruption, to fight against misuse of information, you need to have information with confirmation. That's where we are stuck as on today. We don't have means whether to believe this story or that story. You take two newspapers, reading newspapers, you read them. In one of the newspapers there is a massive gathering of some meeting. In the other newspaper you will find empty chairs in the same meeting. Practical example I am giving you. Across the country, this is happening. And also the channels also. In order to their eagerness to make a story or break a story, or leak a story, they are not worried about finding out the veracity. But by the time you come out with the next story, the damage is already done. So this has to be taken care. While I can understand the eagerness, the commitment of the journalist to unearth something which is hidden, which is suppressed, it's a very good thing, noble thing. At the same time, we must be sure of the truth. Truth should never be sacrificed for the sake of sensationalism. But nowadays, unfortunately, a section of the media, sensation has become their habit, which is causing damage. Friends, the core values which guided journalism in the past are not being observed in some sections, and news is becoming increasingly colored with views which are consistent with the policy of the management of the news organizations. The chairman was talking about the media houses. If it's media houses also, I have no problem. Somebody should house it, na? Otherwise, the media also will become houseless. It's not media houses. It is again the business men who entered media for furtherance of their business. That should not be the business, this is what I am saying. Like the government has no business to be in business, that is a modern thinking now. The businessman has no business to take media as a business. I am not saying that they should do charity. You can't run a newspaper on charity. It costs. But at the same time, the truth should never be a casualty, and this great institution should not be used to further your business interest or your political interest. Earlier politicians used to start newspapers, there are many, in furtherance of a cause. But now, people used to ask me earlier when I was minister, or in earlier government, or also INB minister, people say, sir, what about starting a new channel? I said, I am not interested at all. Why not, sir? Everybody is having a channel nowadays. I used to say, I have 1,000 channels. The moment I start a channel, only one channel will be carrying my news, and other channels will not bother to carry my news. But in spite of this, people, politicians, discredited politicians, or businessmen, to further their own business, their own political cause, they are getting into media. And then, to further their interests, they are distorting the news. I hope it will be an exception, a temporary aberration. But at the end of the day, the views and news should be separated. I always used to argue. I was earlier a spokesman at the national level, and also for a while Minister for Information and Broadcasting. So I always used to argue with my friends, you give your news, your say newspaper, and then confine your views to the editorial or to the opinion page. Nothing wrong. After all, educating the people also is required. But give the news and give your views. And give the alternative views also. When I see some papers, only one view is carried. But when I see other newspapers, they carry the other view also. This view and the other contrary view. That's a very good thing. That should be the practice. So that people get information, whatever it is, whether it is demonetization, whether it is GST, whether it is something else and all, nothing wrong. Democracy requires information. And democracy requires debate. Democracy requires dissent. Of course, in democracy do not mean disintegration. Democracy means again integration. So that is possible when you have an enlightened, responsive press, or where it was mentioned, the credibility. That's where the credibility lies. The credibility should not become a rare commodity. And it must be difficult for you to choose the award winners, because everybody should try to compete with each other. That should be. And then in journalism I found another thing, sensationalism getting more prominence. And constructive is pushed to back and obstructive is pushed to front. I'll just share one of my personal experience. I have a lot of experience with the media people. I can take liberty. So now I have to maintain a little distance for protocol and not being in politics. And when I came to Rajya Sabha some 20 years back. I am a son of a farmer. I am very much concerned that agriculture, which is our basic culture, is not given its due. That's my grouse from those days. Parliament, press, to political parties, most of them are moving towards urban areas. Of course, even I moved from rural development to urban development earlier as a minister. I was a rural development minister, then I went to urban development. There is some amount of, I should say, other bias are being carried away by urban people because they are more organized and readily available. The rural areas do not have that much this thing and all. So there was a debate in Rajya Sabha. The chair was kind enough to allow me to speak on Rajya Sabha. At that time, my party also gave me importance because I was a senior party functionary. So I spoke on agriculture for 52 minutes. And a lot of people, including Mr. M.S. Swaminathan, who was there in Parliament at that time, Sharad Pawarji, another champion of farmers, a lot of other opposition parties, I don't want to take all the name and take your time. They came to me personally and congratulated me. Beautiful speech, very constructive, very elaborate, very detailed. Next day, I saw the newspapers, print media. None of the newspapers carried this news. 52 minutes in Rajya Sabha. And you know how I speak. I need not explain. Except one newspaper, I think I remember Hindu, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu spoke elaborately on the problems of agriculture. That was the news. That too, I am told that there was a journalist who was covering the agriculture and rural development. The rural people, they should be given greater say, greater coverage. And the weaker sections, they should also be given proper coverage because they don't reach their voice. And the women who constitute 50% of the population, they should also be given special weightage. I am not talking of reservation, this percentage and all. It is your duty to reflect the entire society. As I was telling, it's like a mirror, the entire personality of the country. And you say Bharat Mata, and you say India, and you say nationalism. Nationalism means do not mean only the map of India or the photo of Bharat Mata. The people who are living in the country, various people, the suppressed, the depressed, the oppressed people, the rural people, the neglected people. These, they should also be heard. That is the duty of the media, to reach the unreached. To voice the voice of the people whose voice was not heard, who are not organized. That is my advice to the media. Now I think I can give advice now as I am out of politics. Otherwise they say politicians, they are giving sermons. At the same time, deliberate slanting of news, providing disproportionate coverage to issues and also to the acts, organizations or personalities who are relegating hard news to single column or figures or giving prominence to a non-issue that creates more tension among the people, are some of the dangerous trends that have crept into the newsrooms of both print and electronic media. You see in Parliament, It is, of course, basically political parties, they have to take care of the conduct of their members. And it's also for the members of parliament whether they are living up to their expectations of the people or performing their responsibilities or not. But at the same time, the media also has an important role to condemn, to denounce. But you pronounce and announce their actions. If they create some disturbance, break away mic, front page, box item. You make a constructive speech, then you are nowhere in the media. Is it right? Is it not the time to introspect such things? I have experience as a legislator in assembly, and I was a parliamentarian here in parliament. I was minister for parliament affairs also. I have enough experience. I can speak with some authority. I am not saying this party, that party, because this government is that. This has been a habit. It has become a disease affecting a lot of people. Part of the responsibility has to be taken by the media. I am not saying that suppress them, denounce them, such acts.